It did actually gotta work. Hey y'all, it's Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today. And for this video, we are going to be wrapping up my horror bingo board from 2024. Alright, so before we get into anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments if you partook in this challenge. How did you do? Did you get a bingo? Did you black out the board? Did it help you read more horror? Did you find a new favorite? I really hope so, because I had so much fun with this. This horror bingo board was created by Wicked Reading, and I'll put a link to her in the description down below. And I had so much fun. It was a great way to try and encourage people to read more horror books. And of course, because I am an overachiever, I did manage to black out the board. Unfortunately, I did not manage to do so on hard mode across it, but I still did pretty decent in that department. Technically, this officially closes out on September 30th, but seeing as how I have managed to finish it, I raced to do so. I actually have a reading vlog finishing the last 5. If you missed it, I'll put a link to that in the card. And she has now announced the new board, so I figure why not go ahead and do a video closing out and reviewing all of the books I read for this. These are going to be short to little one-ish sentence reviews. They might be a little of run-on sentences in some cases. We're not going to judge. I got a lot of books to talk about. I'm trying to make this easy and quick. So let's dive right in. So starting at the top, we have a book that was published in 2024. Hard mode was to read it in 2024, and unfortunately, I did not manage to do so on that one. But I did read I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones, finally. I would say this is a character study of a boy who is very much not wanting this horror destiny that is pushed upon him, and has so many fun plays on the tropes of the horror genre. I really enjoyed this one. It actually was the first book of the year that made me actively cry. I gave it 5 stars. Next up was The End Times Are Near, to read a book that is a apocalyptic story. Hard mode was a book that included an epilogue, and unfortunately I did not manage to do that, but I did read The Unworthy by Agustina Bastrica. This is a post-apocalyptic cult story that unfortunately didn't really satisfy me when it came to the cult element or the climate horror that played in with the post-apocalyptic world, but it did have creepily good gore. Came out to about a 3-star. Then this next one I actually just ended up changing, because initially I had a different book here, and then realized I actually did read a book which would consider for the hard mode. Prompt was This Is Halloween, to read a book that takes place at or around Halloween. Hard mode was It Trick-or-Treating as mentioned. And I remembered The Babysitter Lives by Stephen Graham Jones has the main character taking care of these kids, and they get all dressed up in their outfits that they were going to wear to go trick-or-treating. Honestly, my go-to review of this is what the f***, but like positively. This is cosmic horror meets haunted house, and it is so weird. 4 stars. After that is Blood on the Cover. Hard mode was where, you know, it's not just a few drops of blood, it's a fair amount. And for this one, I did end up reading This Delicious Death by Kayla Cottingham. This is a YA gory zombie-ish spin on COVID, and I actually really enjoyed that element of it, but it had very eye-roll worthy drama, and I'm not really sure if I like what the story ended up doing at the end. It turned out to be a 3-star. Last prompt on this row is Woods/Wildness, but the hard mode was where there's not some sort of woods or forest on the cover. And luckily for me, this edition of This Is Where We Talk Things Out by Caitlin Marceau does not have those. This was a really uncomfortable family grief horror story that kept me on the edge of my seat and gluttonous for more. This was one of my best books of last year, and it came out to be 5 stars. On to the next row, we have Honoring the Classics. Hard mode was to read a classic book that was written before 1950s. And for this one, it's one of the few that I played around with the genre. For the most part, I stayed with horror, but every once in a while I had a mystery or thriller, and I did go with And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. This was a really bingeable mystery with just enough drag to really keep you coming back for more, but obviously it did feel its age a time or two. Turned out to be a 4-star. I totally get why this one is still sticking around. Next up was a translated work. Hard mode was if there was a note in the book from the translator, and unfortunately I did not complete that one, but I did read Of Cattle and Men by Anna Paula Maya, translated by Zoe Perry. This was a really thought-provoking horror novella that I think would have been more impactful if I hadn't already discussed a lot of these topics in my numerous philosophy courses I did in college. Turned out to be a 3-star. Next up was a cover pick. Hard mode being that you only went into the book based on what was on the cover. You didn't know anything else. And this actually doubled up with a prompt from my Reddit fantasy bingo board in 2024. The Invocations by Crystal Sutherland. This was a amazing witchy read with really phenomenal character work and this really unsettling magic and feminist vibes. I loved everything about this. Very solid 5 stars. Next up was Reaper Read, a book that had themes of grief in it. And I read a lot of those in the last year, actually. But hard mode was where death is actually personified in some way. I ended up going with Green Fuse Burning by Tiffany Morris. And this might be me reaching, but at the same time, I feel like it's not. Kinda. I don't know. It depends on how you read it, I guess. But this was a gorgeously atmospheric work that really encapsulates grief and sows these seeds that just start to get more and more uncomfortable and creepy as the story goes on. It was short and sweet, but damn did it pack a punch. This was 5 stars. Next up was Title Has a Spooky Word. Hard mode is if there's 2 or more. I ended up going with Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. Looking back on it, this is a claustrophobic horror romance that is set on the spaceship equivalent of the Titanic, and it might be haunted. 4 stars. Starting into the middle row is Dead Man Walking, but the hard mode was a part of the series, which unfortunately I did not manage to do. And ironically, this was actually a book I had up as a possibility for the published in 2024. It was not on my radar for this prompt at all, but when I started into it, it did actually gotta work. Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. This was a really fun cinematic horror story that took me by surprise with some of the themes that were going on in it, but I love the discussion around queer representation and AI use in creative spaces. Very strong 4 star. On to the next one with genre bending, but the hard mode was one of the genres is one you don't tend to reach for, and this was kind of difficult for me because I feel like I do read a little bit of everything, but one genre I don't tend to pay as much attention to is historical. So I ended up reading This Cursed House by Del Sandine. This was a haunted house story set in New Orleans, which was right up my alley, but unfortunately it dragged on too long. Turned out to be a 3 star. This middle one I was really excited for because it was a 5 star read. Hard mode was you had predicted it would be a 5 star. And so I ended up picking up Bat Eater by Kylie Lee Baker. I loved it. I swear this is literally a compilation of everything I love to see in horror books put together. Ironically, that book actually had worked for this prompt as well, but it was a BIPOC author, pretty self-explanatory, but the hard mode was that the author is also new to you. And so I ended up reading Woman Eating by Claire Coda. I've been meaning to get to this for so freaking long. So this was the push I needed. And there were a lot of elements in this book that I really enjoyed seeing play out through this lens of vampirism, but unfortunately I felt like the author really tried to juggle too much in it, and it just meant that I didn't get as much depth into the elements I was really enjoying because there was so much going on. This turned out to be about a 3.5 star. Next up was one that I was so excited for because it was cryptid, and I love a good cryptid story, but also hard mode was that you didn't know what the cryptid was or the story around it before going into the book. So I ended up reading Empire of Wild by Sherry Demoline. I really love the themes that were woven into the story, wrapped up around the Métis legend of the Rougarou. It's a werewolf-like creature, but it didn't really stick the landing for me in the end. This one was also a 3.5 star. On to the next row with the title had a number in it. Hard mode was either there were multiple numbers or like some sort of a quantitative word to go along with the number. And I did not meet hard mode, unfortunately. I read Mariko-chan Volume 1 by Tomoki Izumi. So obviously this is the start of a horror manga series that initially is really focused on this gag of the young girl who has the ability to see ghosts, but does not want to react to the ghosts and keeps getting stuck watching these terrifying things play out. But it does start to dive into some darker things as it continues on. This one was also 3.5 stars. Next up was Satanic Panic, but hard mode was that a actual occult piece is utilized at some point in the novel. I ended up going with Where the Dead Brides Gather by Musa Ono, another one that I did not anticipate to use in this board, but it worked out really well because the main character is taken to see a witch doctor numerous times, and he has different items from the occult that he attempts to use to help her. This had a very interesting premise of a young girl having to become the protector of brides from malevolent spirits, but unfortunately it kind of just devolved into this family drama that I didn't really care for. This one was 3 stars. Next one was to read a book club pick at hard mode. There was no hard mode. So I ended up reading The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher, which I did utilize in my in-person fantasy bingo club. Bingo club? That wasn't right. Book Club. This is a cosmic Lovecraftian horror story that was so weird and creepy and definitely fulfilled my want of grown-up Gravity Falls. 4 stars. Up next was Pink Horror, but hard mode was to read a debut book. I had the perfect option for this, The Return by Rachel Harrison. I mean, it is a bright pink cover. This was a creepy story with elements around friendship and grief and also mixed with a frustrating main character. Definitely Rachel Harrison's work. It wasn't my favorite of her stuff, but I did enjoy it. 3.5 stars. We're nearly there. Next up was a book that had multiple POVs. Hard mode was there were also multiple timelines, and I had the perfect book with the sci-fi thriller of Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Julia McAllister. I mean, this is a mystery story that literally goes in reverse timeline. It was a wild and bingeable time. 5 stars. On to the final row with As Seen on the Big Screen. Hard mode was you hadn't seen the film adaptation of it, so I ended up doing Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. Still have not watched the adaptation of it, even though I do think it was a very well written mystery, but I didn't really like a single character and I kind of had to force myself to finish it, even though I can objectively say it was very well written. It turned out to be about a 3.5 stars. This next one, I actually thought I was going to read this book for a different prompt, but it worked here very well. Out of Your Comfort Zone. Hard mode is it's a repeat author, so you've read from them before, and I realized American Rapture by CJ Lead is following a girl in this dystopian apocalyptic society, and that's not something I really would say is in my comfort zone. I don't tend to enjoy those stories, but I did love this author's debut work, so I was very intrigued going in. This was definitely a subgenre I don't tend to like, mixed with themes I absolutely loved and a main character that reminded me I am so glad I'm not a teenager anymore. This was 4 stars. Middle section of this final row initially was a short story collection, which I don't really tend to read, so I made this be my free space, and I just went ahead and slid in here Guillotine by Delilah S. Dawson because it was a horror book I was really hoping to get to. This is a gory, horrific, weirdly fun time that perfectly matches the comparison of The Menu plus Ready or Not. Loved it. 4.5 stars. Second to last, a TBR vet. Hard mode is a book that has been on your TBR for 2+ years, and I ended up reading The Butcher by Jennifer Hellier. I finally got around to this book. This one was a great thriller that had some really heavy horror elements with wild twists and turns, and I really still hate the romance though, but the rest of it, great 4 star. And last but not least is one that I also feel like is kind of a stretch, but Creepy Crawlies. Hard mode is there's Creepy Crawlies on the cover, and I ended up reading Shiver by Junji Ito, my first horror manga by this author, but absolutely not gonna be my last. 4 stars. All right, and on that note, that is officially it. I blacked out this board, had so much fun, found some new favorites, really enjoyed participating. So of course, I'm gonna do it again for the 2025 board. I'm so excited. I'm already working on my TBR, so keep your eyes peeled because that video is going to be coming out soon. On that note, that's officially it for today, y'all. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, let's leave a spiderweb emoji in the comments. I have links to all my socials as well as a few ways you can support me down in the description. I come out videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you. Bye.